My husband and I have been married for 10 years, together for 13. We've known each other since we were teenagers. I've always considered myself a feminist and pushed back against traditional gender norms and archaic male-female power dynamics. I am a girl's girl, I support women, and I am raising my daughters to believe they are equal in a society that often tries to control their bodies or future. My husband has said he is an ally and supports women as well. Over the years, I have noticed my husband explaining things to me in a condescending manner more often. I appreciate when he helps me understand a concept I don't, like anything having to do with car maintenance, but don't appreciate when he tries to tell me how to do something I am well versed in. I don't always call him out on this, but I have snapped at him about it in the past. A few days ago, I was pretty hurt when I tried to offer a solution to a problem, and my husband didn't believe me. A minute later, a male family member offered the same solution, and my husband believed him. I told my husband my feelings were really hurt. I tried to explain that I didn't think what he did was intentional or out of spite, but more so something ingrained in him by society. This resulted in an argument where he told me I was too much of a feminist and hate all men, and should know that he is my ally and not take it personally when he explains things to me in a condescending manner or takes someone else's suggestion over mine. He yelled, I cried. He also told me he would never explain anything to me ever again, and I could figure out things all on my own since I am such a strong woman. It felt like he was throwing a tantrum. We haven't talked about it much since, but I did tell him today we need to have a longer conversation. I feel like he isn't an ally, and am starting to wonder if he's been all talk about supporting women and being a feminist himself, since he often isn't supportive of me. I am not sure how to move forward or how to approach a conversation with him. Part of me feels like he wants to be a feminist, but not when he is challenged or called out. I am not sure where to go from here, and all suggestions are welcome. Now for an update. I am very thankful for the advice and insight. What stuck with me most were the suggestions to take the isms out of the conversation and focus on the communication issue. I did just that, and the conversation went better than expected. Obviously, we have work to do on how we communicate, specifically me not jumping to conclusions and him not throwing a tantrum. But I'm optimistic. For those who like specifics, my husband is indeed an over-explainer, and I think he doesn't see it as explaining things to me in a condescending manner, but more so, giving his input. He also told me that he often feels like I look for the negative in him because he is a man forgetting all the positive, which there has been a lot. I explained that when he yells and throws a tantrum, it makes me feel like my feelings are invalid. We are both a work in progress. I have spent most of my life afraid to stand up to men. Over the last year, I have decided to stop the silence and call out the unacceptable behavior. I do believe my husband is struggling with this, as he is the closest man to me and often hears it the most. The fight stemmed from me telling my husband there was a driveway near a bathroom we should pull into when we were on a day trip and he was driving. He didn't believe me. When the male relative told him there was indeed a driveway, he believed him. On the surface, it was silly to fight about, but this isn't the first time he has listened to a man over me. When we spoke today, he said it wasn't that he didn't believe me, but that the way I described it was confusing. And some of you are a riot with these comments. I don't know, wanting equal treatment doesn't seem like a political issue to me, nor does it warrant suggesting I should date women. But this is Reddit, and I guess I shouldn't have expected anything less. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. He told me I was too much of a feminist and hate all men, and should know that he is my ally and not take it personally when he mansplains or takes someone else's suggestion over mine. Did you point out that the issue was that he took the same suggestion you made, but only when it was offered by a man? How does he justify that? If he were actually an ally, he'd be willing to reflect on his internal biases, which we all have, and accept that there are some behaviors he may need to change. It sounds like he supports women until he's actually challenged to provide that support, at which point he gets offended and lashes out. He's made it clear what he really thinks of feminism and your beliefs in general. I don't know how you move forward from here unless he's willing to admit that he has things to learn. Can I ask, how has he demonstrated with actions in the past that he is supportive of feminism? Comment 2. What does he mean by tone it down? Nothing you said or did here would make me think that you're overbearing with your beliefs. Even though these beliefs are rooted in basic human empathy and respect for women, so you should be as overbearing as possible. A lot of men have a difficult time accepting authority from a woman, regardless of what they say or believe. It is habitual for them to resist it. To my knowledge, you tried explaining this to him, and his reaction was just immature. How can someone be too much of a feminist? It just doesn't make sense. Sounds like resentment. And by the way, he did throw a tantrum because you called him out. Now, for the update. 2 weeks after the last convo with her husband, I noticed he still used that condescending tone we talked about. Not gonna lie, it was like he couldn't help himself. You know how when you try to stop eating junk food, but then someone puts a pizza in front of you and you're just like, well, I guess I'm having a slice? Yeah, it was kind of like that, but for his tone. So, we had this family dinner at my parents' place to celebrate my dad's birthday. My brother Mark was in town with his new girlfriend, Clara. This was her first time meeting the family, so naturally, we all put on our best faces and tried to act like we weren't just arguing in the car on the way over. During dinner, Mark made a joke about how Clara could easily handle my dad's dad jokes. Honestly, we were all just relieved someone else was on the receiving end of those cringy one-liners for once. Everyone laughed, including my husband, which was a nice change of pace. Then, while I was talking about this school project our daughters were working on, my husband interrupted me. Like, dude, come on. I mean, he said something like, you know how kids are, and explained something I'd already mentioned. I looked around the table, and my mom was giving me that look. You know the one. The look that says, I'm not going to say anything now, but you know I noticed. After dinner, we moved to the living room for dessert. The atmosphere was different, though. You could kind of feel the love, but also that awkwardness sitting in the corner like the weird uncle that nobody wants to talk to. My husband and Mark started chatting about sports, and I felt like I was at a concert where you can't see the stage. I tried to join in, but my husband just brushed me off with a dismissive wave. Clara, bless her heart, saw how uncomfortable I was and tried to change the subject by asking me about my job. I could tell she was trying to lighten the mood, and honestly, I appreciated it. After dessert, I needed a break from the awkwardness, so I excused myself to help my mom in the kitchen. While we were washing dishes, my mom brought up my communication issues with my husband. I kinda wanted to dodge the topic, so I said we were working on things. But my mom was like, nope, not letting you off that easy, and insisted on sharing her observations. She said she noticed how my husband often cut me off during conversations. Then my mom just kept going. She said she'd noticed it for a while now, even before I brought it up. You know when someone says something nice about you, and you're like, thanks, but you're also kinda embarrassed? That was me. I was just standing there, nodding, and trying not to blush from all the praise. As we were finishing up, my husband came into the kitchen and tried to joke about needing help with the dishes. He had that frown on his face like he just bit into a lemon or something. He made the joke, and when neither my mom nor I laughed, he just walked away. Later that evening, we went home, and he asked if I was upset about something. I was like, nope, everything's fine, but we both knew that was a lie. A few days later, we had a small gathering with friends. We were trying to keep things light and not dwell on our issues. During the event, I was giving a toast, and my husband spoke over me again. I swear this was becoming a pattern. One of my friends noticed the dynamic and subtly asked if everything was all right between us. I just gave her the classic, I'm fine smile. After the gathering, my husband wanted to talk about what happened during the toast. He seemed genuinely confused about why I was upset, which led to another one of our conversations. We both agreed to be more mindful of how we communicate. The following week, we went to a wedding together. It was like a test to see if we could handle being around other people without any drama. During the reception, a guest brought up my husband's job. He quickly cut her off to explain his point, and I just sat there, rolling my eyes so hard I thought I'd see my brain. I mean, come on. It's like we were in a sitcom where all the problems get resolved in 30 minutes, but we're still stuck in the 15-minute mark. After the wedding, my husband asked what was bothering me, and I decided to be honest. I told him I felt like he was still using that condescending tone, and it made me feel small. I mean, can you blame me? He was acting like he was the main character in a movie, and I was just the background actor. He apologized and said he'd try to do better. Edit. During our restaurant date, we talked about our communication issues again. He admitted he hadn't realized how often he cut me off and used a condescending tone. He also mentioned seeing a therapist for his anger issues, which surprised me. I asked why he hadn't told me, and he said he wanted to handle it alone first. He's been working on his anger, and though it's a slow process, I see some improvement. We're both committed to making this work and being more supportive of each other. Am I the idiot for confronting my fiancé at a family dinner after he left me and took our dog? I am 28 years old and have been with my fiancé, who is 27 years old, for 7 years and engaged for around 2 years. We've had our struggles like any other couple, but nothing major, I would say, except for once or twice a few years ago. Suddenly, on the day my fiancé seemed really sad after work and wouldn't tell me why. All of a sudden, he's crying and telling me that he's been lying to himself lately and to me about wanting to get married and feeling happy. Over the last few days, he has said that he loves me more than anything, but that he wants to start fresh with no responsibilities. We have pets, but no children and no desire for any, and he thinks he will be happier without me. I am completely blindsided by this and totally beside myself. He left on Tuesday night with the dog and some things, and has been slowly taking more things. He came over last night and this afternoon, and I poured my heart out to him. He was saying that he is scared that if he stays with me, he will continue to be unhappy like he has been the last few days. But then he is also telling me that this is so hard for him and that he has missed me and has not been coping well. He seems depressed, and I was heartbroken, begging him to let us have another chance. He kept looking like he wanted to say yes and physically looked like he was fighting himself, but he kept saying no. He said that it would be easy to say yes, but he feels he needs to make the hard decision for himself. Whilst we weren't perfect, he seemed excited about the wedding, the honeymoon, and the party we had planned. He had bought his suit recently, and I bought my wedding dress. I genuinely thought things were going well, but it was stressful planning a wedding, though still exciting as far as I thought. He is staying at his mom's house for now with our dog, and I wouldn't be able to take care of him by myself. He is coming to move the rest of his stuff out tomorrow. When taking some of his belongings today, I basically had to get angry with him and tell him to leave, because he was telling me all of this stuff about needing to be free, but then couldn't walk out the door, saying it was so hard. When I confronted him and said his words say one thing and his actions say another, he denied wanting to stay with me. He said his head has been going round and round in circles this last week, and that he can't calm the noise. I've given him the space he asked for, but it seems like everything is getting worse. I am so confused and heartbroken. No one saw this coming, not even his friends. I said to him, "You do realize your responsibilities won't just stop because you're single? This is life. What will you do if you leave me and get your own place and you aren't happy after a while?" All he could say was that he would know he messed up at that point. His parents barely even have room for him and the dog, never mind all his things too, so I don't think he could stay there long anyway. Is this a major episode of cold feet that may turn around? Do you think something more is going on? Please note, this is his first ever relationship, but he did say to me he had no desire for another relationship or partner, sleeping with anyone else, etc. So I don't think it's a lack of experience for him. This seems related to going out and doing what he wants when he wants, but he has always been able to do this anyway. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I know this probably isn't what you want to hear, but often when men leave, they lie about the reason. Now granted, my friends and I are older, but I know of at least 4 couples where the husband left, saying he just wasn't happy anymore. In each of those cases, he had someone else but didn't want to admit it for fear his wife would get vindictive during the divorce proceedings. It really sucks, but be prepared that he has either met someone else or has found himself interested in someone he has known for a while. Unless he tells you the real reason or is willing to seek counseling to address his sudden fear of commitment, get ready to find out something even more hurtful than it already is. I really feel bad for you. This is a terrible thing to go through. Comment 2. To be honest, I think he's probably been feeling unhappy for a while and maybe thought engagement or marriage would fix it. And as the day approached closer, he realized the weight of what was about to happen. You've been together 7 years, so it was probably difficult for him to come to terms with the fact that he wanted it to end. Though, the way he did it was extremely unfair, and I would ask him to be responsible for the weight of the financial burden of canceling a wedding. It's not fair to you to have to pay all that money because he couldn't be enough of a grown-up to end it sooner. Now, for the update. I was minding my own business, dealing with the mess of my life when I got the text. It was from my soon-to-be ex across the street, who's now my ex across the street. It was an invite to a family dinner at my parents' place. Dinner was set for the following Friday. My mom was super excited and included the fiancé's family too. Apparently, the fiancé's mom reached out to my mom to invite us all over, hoping to clear the air. I was like, sure, why not? I could use some family time and a distraction from the fact that my life was falling apart. So Friday rolled around and I was super nervous. I didn't know what to expect, but I decided to suck it up and go. My mom had the place all decked out with a colorful spread of food, and everyone looked eager to catch up. As soon as I walked in, my heart dropped. There was my fiancé, looking all cozy with my brother Jake, laughing it up. I tried to act normal, greeted everyone, and sat down at the table like nothing was wrong. Everyone was chatting away, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling hanging over me. It was like the awkwardness was just too much. In the middle of all this, the fiancé's mom raised a toast to family unity. I almost choked on my food. It was so awkward. During dinner, I caught the fiancé stealing glances at me, like, what was that about? 1 minute you're breaking my heart, and the next you're thinking about getting back together? After dinner, we all moved to the living room for dessert. I tried to engage in some light conversation, but the fiancé was being all distant. They'd occasionally join in on the jokes with Jake, and it just made me feel like a third wheel in my own life. I went to the kitchen to help clean up, and the fiancé followed. We spoke in hushed tones, and they admitted they were still confused about everything. Just then, their phone buzzed loudly from the living room, and they had to step away to answer it. I overheard the fiancé's mom asking about some vacation they were planning, and the fiancé hesitated, saying it was just a thought. But the mom was all over them, pressing for details. My ears perked up, so I snuck back into the living room unnoticed. I heard them talking about heading to this beach resort, a place we had planned to go together. They mentioned wanting to go solo for a fresh start, and I felt this overwhelming anger and betrayal. I was ready to explode. After the dinner, as everyone was saying their goodbyes, I pulled the fiancé aside. I asked why they'd plan a trip to a place that held so many memories for us. They stammered out some excuse about trying to figure things out. I pressed harder, and they admitted they were considering going with a friend, which felt like a slap in the face. I was done sitting around, so I messaged this friend of the fiancé. I spilled the tea about everything the fiancé had been going through and how their decision to leave had impacted me. The friend was all concerned and said they would talk to the fiancé. At the next family gathering, the fiancé's friend confronted them, and it led to a full-blown argument. I watched from a distance while they went at it. The fiancé left the gathering looking like they'd seen a ghost. The next week, I got a call from the fiancé, who was fuming about their friend's involvement. The argument went off the rails, with them accusing me of meddling and overstepping boundaries. They hung up on me. Then, a few days later, my mom told me that the fiancé had ended up canceling the beach trip entirely. I'm still processing everything. I just feel so lost and confused about all of this. My mom says I should just give the fiancé space and time, but it's so hard when they're living across the street, you know? I can't help but think about what could have been and why things turned out this way. I guess I'm just trying to figure out the next steps in this mess of a life and hope for some clarity. I might not have another update after this, but who knows? Edit. The fiancé's mom pressured them to cancel the trip. Their friend confronted them, which led to a big argument about the mess. Am I the idiot for cutting off my family after they hid my sister's marriage from me? My dad fell ill and my sister was having a baby about 4 years ago. I felt like I wanted to be closer to them and help out. My then girlfriend of 3 years that I was living with didn't want to move with me, so she broke it off when I explained what I wanted to do. Friendships are hard for me to keep up, and it's not easier when you're a 6-hour drive away from each other. So I've drifted apart from my good friends from that city as well. In my hometown, I don't have a circle in the same way as I had in the old city. I've been babysitting, hanging out, and helping with my parents' house ever since moving back, and it's been kind of great. We're not very close, but we meet and have dinner once a week or so. There's rarely any other words than kind ones, but there's not a lot of sharing of emotions either. Shallow, but nice. Now to the main event, one of these weekly dinners. Just after the main course, we start talking about the father of my sister's child. They live together, but he rarely joins our dinners because of migraines. We talked about him for a bit, and I mentioned him as my sister's fiancé instead of boyfriend, or the Swedish word sambo, a word made up of 2 words, sam, meaning together, and bo, meaning to live with, referring to a person you're in a relationship with and live with, instead of using his name. In a rather snarky and unusual tone, my sister proclaims that you should really start calling him my husband. We've been married for 4 years. This took me by surprise, and I had to tell her that I didn't know that she was married. She giggled and told me that she must have forgotten to tell you. Apparently, they had done it in a courthouse on a whim, just before my niece was born. To them, it was just some legal document and no big deal. Afterwards, they had hosted a small dinner for 15 to 20 people and told everyone who was there. It was during the last few months of Infection 19, and I was living in the other city at the time. Because of these reasons, she had planned a new dinner to tell the ones who couldn't come to the first dinner, but in the end, just canceled it and told everyone she thought. Afterwards, my niece yelled about something, and they laughed the whole thing off before I could start talking about it for real. So apparently, my only sibling doesn't care enough to tell me she's married, and neither do my parents. She only has one brother, which is me, so I thought I'd at least be among the first 10 to 15 to know she'd been married. But I was wrong. To be fair, my parents did say that they felt it was her news to break to me. This was a week ago, and I haven't answered any calls or texts from either my parents or my sister since. My sister left a voicemail saying she needed help with her garden. She didn't mention a hair of concern about me being marginalized out of knowing her relationship status for the last 4 years. This event didn't really affect me at first, but slowly it has really started to eat at me. I changed so much in my life, arguably for the worse for me personally, in their favor, and they can't even be bothered to tell me about life events of this caliber? Am I being a drama queen for thinking so? Or is this just a product of our relationships being sort of shallow? P.S. To anyone who asks why I haven't asked her when the wedding is going to be during the past few years, it's quite a rude question in my family to ask somebody a question of that nature when the reason behind pushing the wedding up could be financial. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. 2 dinner parties, and you didn't make the invite list to either one. You were not in her first thoughts or second thoughts. Why are you making these people a priority when they are most definitely not making you one? Move back and claim your old life. You only get one shot at a happy, fulfilling life. Stop wasting it on people that don't make you a priority. Comment 2. I'm low contact with my brother. He lives on the other side of the United States. I haven't seen him in 10 years. Even he texted me about getting married. I wasn't invited to his courthouse wedding, but I did get a text with a photo. All to say, it's weird what your sister did. Don't let her tell you otherwise. Now, for the update. 2 days after that dinner from hell, I got a group text from my family about a birthday party for my sister's kid. Like, cool, I guess. The text said everyone was invited, including my sister's husband, the guy I still hadn't met. So, yeah. I was just sitting there thinking about whether I wanted to go or not. I was still feeling some type of way about being excluded from the whole marriage announcement. And honestly, I wasn't sure how the family dynamics were going to be. I decided to go to the party. I mean, it was a birthday party for a baby, so how bad could it be? Plus, I thought maybe it would be a good chance to address all this stuff. The party was at my sister's house, which was completely decorated with bright balloons and had a giant cake. When I got there, I noticed my sister was acting super cheerful, and I couldn't help but feel like it was all just a little too much. Like, why are you so happy today? You weren't this happy when you were telling me you got married and didn't tell me. So, her husband was there just chatting away with the guests, and I was feeling this weird mix of curiosity and just, I don't know. I went up to everyone and greeted them, but the atmosphere was really forced and awkward. It felt like everyone was just pretending that nothing was wrong. My sister introduced her husband to the guests like it was no big deal, and I just couldn't help but feel even more left out. I tried talking to the brother-in-law, but it was like we had nothing in common to even talk about. He mentioned a vacation they took recently, and I just stood there like, awesome. I didn't know about that either. I noticed my parents were being all super supportive of my sister, like nothing even happened, and it just made my discomfort even worse. At one point, my sister pulled me aside to ask for help with the baby, acting like there wasn't this huge issue hanging over our heads. While I was helping her with some decorations, I overheard her talking about planning another family gathering and not even mentioning me. I mean, what did they expect? That I would just hang out with them and pretend like I was totally cool with being excluded? After the cake was cut and everyone was, I don't know, enjoying themselves, I finally decided to confront my sister about not telling me she got married. I did it in front of some family members, hoping that maybe they would back me up. She just brushed me off, saying it wasn't a big deal. I was like, are you kidding me? This is a huge thing you didn't tell me about, and you're acting like I'm being dramatic. Her husband tried to step in and lighten the mood, but it felt super dismissive. I said it was a big deal and that I felt completely excluded from something important in her life. She rolled her eyes and said she thought I would understand. That's when my parents finally said something, saying the family needs to communicate better. The conversation escalated from there. With my sister calling me dramatic, I could see some people staring in shock, and I just didn't care at that point. Her husband awkwardly suggested we focus on the baby's birthday instead, and I could tell he was really trying to ease the tension. Later that night, while cleaning up, my sister's husband came up to me and asked if we could talk privately. So we stepped outside, and he admitted he didn't know about the marriage announcement either. He told me he thought the family was close, and that he felt out of the loop too. We talked about how my sister can sometimes overlook other people's feelings in her excitement. He suggested we should all have a family meeting to clear the air about everything. After the party, I decided to text my family, proposing a family meeting for the next weekend. My parents responded positively, but my sister seemed super reluctant. She eventually agreed though, because, I don't know, I guess she had to. Her husband texted me later, saying he was totally on my side, which I really appreciated. Edit, I want to clarify that my sister and her husband have been together for about 3 years, so this wasn't a new relationship. I also didn't know her husband very well, which is why I felt uncomfortable around him. The family meeting happened last weekend, and it was a lot. I expressed my feelings about being excluded, and my sister apologized for not telling me about the marriage. She explained she thought it was a small thing and admitted that maybe it wasn't the right call. We also had a long talk about family communication, and it felt good to get everything out in the open. Overall, things have improved since then. If you liked this video, You'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.